So, you fancy yourself a metaphysician. Or maybe you're thinking, what is a metaphysician? Why did I even click on a book review called What is Reality? There is a part of me, a small part of me, that I would like to view myself as an amateur metaphysician. I spend my time as a pastor wrestling with questions on human nature, our relationship to God, the nature of the divine creator, and do we have a free will? And if we do, what can we do with that free will? But I've never read a book on metaphysics proper. All of my books have been on theology. So when I saw a new book that recently came out by IVP Academic called What is Reality? An Introduction to Metaphysics, I thought, here's my chance. Ross Inman, you're going to reveal to me that I am a natural metaphysician, and I'm going to make a YouTube video on the introduction to metaphysics that will be known as an ideal introduction to the topic. Here's my chance. Well, after finishing Inman's book, I am 100% positive that I am not and will never be a metaphysician. Two reasons. First, I find the terminology in metaphysics to be confusing, and I'm not overly interested in basically learning another language, which is pretty much what one would need to do to become an expert in metaphysics. You need to learn new definitions to a host of terms. And second, this is by far the larger reason. The vast majority of the questions that metaphysics is asking and answering, I don't care about them. I kept waiting for Inman to cover a subject in this book that really interested me, and none of them did. But in spite of my lack of interest in the questions asked by metaphysics, I have very good things to say about this book. I'm kind of a confused individual. And with that, welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books that will help you to dive deep into the wide variety of topics in theological literature, please subscribe to the channel in order to stay up to date with my current reviews. Also, share this video with others. You're the ones who help other people know about the work of Ross Inman. And I also want to once again say thank you to the Buy Me a Coffee members. Oh, I love your guys' support. It allows me to cover the costs of keeping up with Rev Reads, even if it doesn't quite cover all of them right now, which means that if you love this channel, if you have benefited from it, I would encourage you to consider supporting it at a beginning membership price of only $3 a month. So, nothing really interested me in what is reality. But I gotta say, at the same time, this book is excellent. Inman really does a fantastic job at introducing what is metaphysics, which is a much harder question to answer than I expected. Actually, when he started his section on the fundamental question of what is metaphysics and how it's often misunderstood and hard to define, I kind of started rolling my eyes. Like, you can't even describe this topic and define it, you wrote a book on it. Turns out, though, he's right. My short answer here probably will not be satisfactory to a lot of people in the field, but after reading this, I would say that metaphysics, according to Inman, is the science of being. It is an investigation into the many senses of being and how they relate to one another. Or you could say it is the study of what grounds what, studying the ordered structure of the universe. It is a mode of inquiry about describing the essence of things and what is possible. After he defines metaphysics, he then looks at, is it even possible to do metaphysics? And answer the questions that it's asking from a Christian perspective. And then the rest of the book, pages 67 through 247, provides the reader with what I would say are the fundamental building blocks to doing metaphysics according to Inman. And I enjoyed reading the first 3 chapters far more than the heart of the book, which looks at these foundational principles or subjects of metaphysics. But in spite of my lack of enjoyment reading this, I found Inman to be remarkably clear as an author, especially for the subject that he was covering, because he was at oftentimes both introducing a subject and discussing the ways that it has been viewed by many different philosophers. And he was surprisingly consistently clear and understandable, doing both things at the same time. He did a great job at defining the terminology and illustrating it and making it clear what various ways people have viewed this subject. I would say if I was a student in school and what is reality was assigned for my philosophy or metaphysics class, this is a book that I would probably equally parts love and hate. I would love it because Inman wrote so well that it was not a chore to read, but I would hate it because there is so much terminology. And if I had it for a class, I know that I would have to memorize so much of it as a student. This book would take a ton of work for a student to master. So it's not a chore to read, although honestly, it was a little bit of a chore to read toward the end. Once he began to write on substratum and the bundle theory, I was like, I'm pretty much done. That was the point where I was like, okay, metaphysics is a subject that I'm never going to dive deeply into. Well, here are my overall thoughts then on what is reality. I do think after reading that this book is an ideal introduction to the topic of metaphysics. Inman defines his terms well. He describes them accurately. It's easy to understand. He introduces the reader to the subjects of metaphysics in a way that they should be able to get it and understand it. If you can't grasp what Inman is writing about, then you would have to say metaphysics just isn't for you. But more than that, I think this is a book that will allow students to know if they're truly interested in diving deeper into this area. I bet there are a fair share of theologians and philosophically minded people who are interested in specific areas related to metaphysics. And they're wondering if they would enjoy a broader look at that subject. Well, this book is going to answer that question for you. I know now that I am not interested in being a metaphysician, but I'm glad that I've read this book, if for no other reason than to know now where I stand when it comes to this subject. I think they're asking a lot of questions and they're debating over a lot of things that in my mind just don't matter. Now, maybe I'm wrong at that, and maybe we're all the better because there are people who are wrestling with these questions. But if you are a professor and you're teaching on metaphysics and you're curious if this would be a good text for an introductory class, as someone who is a novice who just read it, I would say yes. This is a great introduction to the test. I just wish I was more interested in the questions being asked.